Part 4. Chapter 25. The darkness lasts a moment. Quiet. Still. He feels nothing anymore. No pain. He is beyond the land now, the place of the dead. Sheol, they call it. And is this it? For eternity? To drift in darkness? But then a flickering noise on his left comes, and he feels himself able to turn and look at it. He still has his body. He sees a flame, a small one, the size of an oil lamp. His eyes adjust, and he sees that it is actually a large fire, but far away. He wonders if he can go to it, feels something like earth beneath him, and he takes a step. As he moves, he notices more of his body. He is not a spirit at all. Now he feels cold again, and wet. He shivers. The taste of blood is in his mouth, and pain again, which upsets him. He is not dead, then? But where is he? He feels something warm pouring into his eye and wipes at it. Blood. He touches his scalp and finds an enormous gash. Remembers he was struck by a slinger's stone just before it became dark. Even though he senses pain in his lungs and on his head, he is not impeded anymore. His feet move one in front of the other, and he is drawn to the firelight. Around him it finally brightens enough to see that he is still on the ridge. Ahead is his farm. There is a fire nearby, and a man sits next to it. Shamgar turns around, vaguely searching for Philistines, but the forest is quiet. He looks back at the man. It is the stranger, huddled under a winter cloak. Shamgar makes his way to the other side of the fire and kneels. Only, it is not a fire like a campfire or a watchfire. It is a stone altar with flames on top of it. He cannot tell what it is burning. No smell of wood smoke, no smell of meat cooking. The stranger watches him. Shamgar, weary of games, watches him back. If confusion is to be his lot, he is resigned to it. Yahweh is pleased with you, the stranger says. Shamgar scowls at this. Yet he is no longer angry, only confused. This too puzzles him. It is odd the Philistines have stopped pursuing him. His wounds bleed, pain exists, but there is no other feeling of threat. Somehow it is the stranger's presence alone that he feels. What will happen? It is the only thing Shamgar can think to ask. The stranger gives the slightest of smiles. He stands up, and as he does, the forest starts to fade away. Rippling ice and wind all around, and the altar remains, its flames burning, but everything else slips away as though blown by a gale. Shamgar feels the cold, shrugs against it under his cloak. He keeps his eyes fixed on the altar and the flames upon it. Something tells him to. He does not know what. Then he feels a ripping, a tearing, a slashing across his chest as he is devoured by something that roars. Chapter 26. Then, all is calm. Faint rippling sounds, like water lapping on a creek bank. He looks down and grasps that he is standing in water up to his ankles. A vast sea stretches away from him in every direction. On the far horizon, under a twilight sky, vast mountains stand watch in every direction, terrible and powerful. This is the dream again, but now he senses it is real. A small spark of light, there and then gone. Fully alert, he searches the darkness where the spark had been. Another scraping noise, a flare of sparks, and Shamgar realizes he is looking at a fire being lit. The flames grow slowly. All of time is slowing. He feels even his very heartbeat going still. Then the fire roars to life, swirling and twisting in unnatural ways, creating something like the mirage across hazy stones on a hot day. He changes his focus from the fire to what can be seen in its light. There's a man standing on the edge of it, and he is looking at Shamgar. Shamgar tries to say something, but he is not certain he still has a throat to speak with. Terror. That is what he feels. The endless depths of terror. Terror of the ages past and the ages to come, for this man has no age to him. He could be in his 20th year or his 10,000th. His beard frames a hard, scar-covered face, the marks of war wounds, torn flesh on his scalp. As the firelight grows, it reveals more of him, armor, and a weapon belt of some kind, but Shamgar cannot make out the forging. Shamgar's wife, his farm, everything is shrouded in distant memory. There is only this warrior next to his fire. He is everything. He is all. The man approaches Shamgar through the flames that are coming from the top of what he now sees is a stone altar, and with the man comes a flood of dread and power. Something rages in the air as the stranger walks, heavy like the purple and gray storms that swallow the pass in the summer heat. The warrior slides a blade out of his belt, and in a fluid motion presses the tip into Shamgar's chest. The prickle of pain it creates is the first physical sensation Shamgar has had since he entered this dream. Shamgar is helpless to resist the blade. The man will shove it forward in a powerful stab, and Shamgar's flesh will part before it like the fat of a new lamb, and all will be over, and it will be such relief that Shamgar finds himself yearning for the stranger to just finish him now. But the warrior does not kill him yet. He stares into Shamgar, the sword tip pressed painfully into his chest, and stands perfectly still. Thoughts are in Shamgar's mind, disconnected, but somehow intentional. The stranger wants him to see something. He concentrates. There is lightning on a dark sky, a river of blood across a golden desert, fire racing to the heavens and swallowing the mountains, a chariot, its rider in gleaming armor, collapsing into a foamy, raging sea. Serpents and corpses and ever more fire, until the fire consumes all around and he begins to feel it burn in his mind and into his flesh, tearing up all that he is, consuming everything but his eyes, because through his eyes he still sees the warrior watching him and feels the blade pressing harder against his chest until it finally bursts through the surface. The blade goes all the way into his heart. The fire from the altar comes alive and roars until it reaches the hilt of the sword, then enters the sword itself and sears through the blade into his chest. Through the pain, Shamgar hears an ancient voice, more powerful and terrible than all. I am Yahweh, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and you will cut down my enemies until even the stones cry out praise to my name. Chapter 27. Shamgar is on his ledge above the pass, just as before, but now he feels very different. Panting, sweating, pressure in his head and chest as though he is going to rip apart just by breathing. He is suddenly compelled to jump to his feet, and he does, his movement so fierce and powerful that he nearly leaps off the ledge. His ears discern every sound, his eyes catch every movement. Hawks high above waiting for the winter storm to pass. The whispered mutterings of Philistine soldiers and officers close by. All of these are as clear as though they are happening inside of his head. Every flash of a snowflake in the breeze and every icy stone on the mountainside is overwhelming in its clarity. He lets out a groan like steam escaping a baking pot. His chest and arms start to twitch and jerk as his muscles seem to flood with fire itself. Yes, fire. That is what he is feeling, though he cannot see it. He only sees the past that leads to his home and all that he loves in this life. And then the slightest sound that he should have never heard is loud and raging in his ear, the sound of an arrow being fixed into a notch. Shamgar plunges his hand into the snow and picks up the nearest fist-sized rock. He hurls it with all of his hate in a perfect throw towards the sound. The stone crushes the face of the Philistine soldier who has appeared on Shamgar's ledge. He flops backwards into his partner, who finds himself covered in a spray of blood. Shamgar looks around for a weapon and spots the ox goad in the snow. He picks it up, squeezes it tight in his fingers, and runs towards the other Philistine soldier, who struggles to shove his dead friend aside and pull out his blade. But Shamgar has already reached him and buried the tip of the goad so hard into his chest that it bursts out the other side. Shamgar never slows. He rips out the hooked tip of the goad, breaking the man's ribs completely apart. His ears hear everything. His eyes find more enemies. At least 100 Philistines have been sent into the forest after him and are climbing the hill. He sees them all, knows where to strike them. It all becomes perfectly clear and perfectly still for the shortest moment, until the fire rages up through his feet and legs and chest, and he cannot stop himself from running down the hill into the forest. He cuts from tree to tree, boulder to boulder. He knows every ravine and stone in this land and hides himself before striking, finding a man and then killing him, sometimes with his ox goad, sometimes with his fists, his fingers, ramming his thumbs into eyes and breaking skulls with the ox goad. Shamgar moves as a spirit through the forest, careful to use the trees and boulders to his advantage, hiding when necessary and emerging to slit a throat or break a neck. As he rushes down the hill, he sees glimpses of the vast ranks of soldiers still in the pass, so many of them between him and what he loves. "You will save my people," the voice again. And yet it is not merely a voice, it is a fire. But he knows it now, knows the fire of the Ancient One, the builder of worlds, the destroyer of kingdoms, the one who has commanded him to spill every drop of Philistine blood until even the stones cry out praise to his name. Shamgar sees more soldiers moving through the undergrowth nearby. He cuts their legs out from under them with the ox goad's hook. Their screams merge with the screams of other dying men scattered throughout the woods, sounding like animals caught in snares, like demons fleeing. The Philistines who chased him into the trees believe that is exactly what the sound is. They are running away from him, shouting to each other that a god demon is in the woods. Shamgar pursues them until he emerges out of the forest into the boundary, where the army and the handmaiden wait for him. Chapter 28. He senses something, unsure what it is, then sees the handmaiden standing over the corpse of the Hebrew girl. The handmaiden has her bare legs wrapped around the idol. He hears every curse she mutters, sees her eyes twitching back and forth under their lids. The acolyte circles her, pointing at Shamgar and speaking her own curses. The power coils and pulses in his muscles. He finally understands what he is feeling in his spirit. He is not merely angry, he is offended. Offended that they would dare bring false gods across the boundary of Yahweh's lands. Behind the handmaiden, he sees the ranks of soldiers yelling and pounding their weapons on their shields, demanding the chance to fight him. He laughs at them, wants nothing more in this life than to stand over their corpses and taunt their gods. "Send your champion," he says. The king of Gath appears to be surprised that Shamgar is standing before him. Finally, he raises his arm. 3 warriors emerge from the ranks, 3 chosen fighters from Gath who have been drilled in warfare since childhood. They wield 3 different weapons, the axe, the sword, the spear. 3 souls immersed in the pagan waters of the temple and dedicated to Dagon, possessed with his wickedness. They wear nothing but loincloths, even in winter, their chests heavily tattooed with nightmarish images of human sacrifices. Shamgar whirls the ox goad in his arms to feel its balance again. His blood roars hot, and the scorching pain behind his eyes and across his chest rages, denying him any thought except giving the stones below the blood offering Yahweh has demanded. The first warrior, the axe, swings his weapon savagely but darts aside when Shamgar counterattacks, ensuring that the warrior with the spear is able to make a thrust. Shamgar leaps away from it only to land directly in front of the warrior with the sword, who slashes at Shamgar's waist, making a shallow cut. Shamgar eases back as they circle him. They coordinate their attacks, not coming at him one by one, but with a unison of movements that would wear down any other fighter. Overwhelming force, but also light on their feet, bobbing and weaving away from his strikes, and waiting patiently for openings. They are vastly more skilled at fighting than Shamgar, but as the moments pass and no one is able to gain ground on him, Shamgar sees where his advantage will come. He is simply not tiring. His energy is increasing, and while they are formidable fighters, as the combat drags on, their movements are getting slower. With every swing of the ox goad, he feels a surge of strength. He is getting more powerful as the fire consumes him. The warrior with the axe falls first. He makes an advance on Shamgar's left flank to cut low against his leg. Shamgar twists away. He manages to get enough leverage on the ox goad to swipe the hook toward the axe warrior. The hook catches the warrior's knee, and Shamgar feels it puncture deep. He plants his foot and jerks the goad back as hard as he can. The force rips away the warrior's kneecap and sinews. The Philistine lets out his first shout of the fight. He falls to his side, screaming for his gods. The other 2 have not waited to see what happens and are attacking Shamgar simultaneously. He blocks high against the sword while leaping over a stab from the spear. He blocks 2 more strikes. They are slower, much slower. He darts backwards and does a twisting leap to gain distance. The 2 champions are too exhausted to chase him. Shamgar glances at the handmaiden again. She is chanting her prayers. He raises the ox goad over his head and attacks the other 2 warriors. They rise to meet him, but their attacks are slow, and he easily dodges them, rolling hard to his right and swinging the iron tip against the exposed underarm. The hook finds a notch in the man's ribs. The Philistine starts to pull away, realizes what has happened, and his face fills with terror. Shamgar wrenches the hook with all of his might. The ribs tear away from the warrior's side. Shamgar never stops moving and hooks the goad into the jaw of the remaining warrior. The Philistine drops his weapon. Shamgar does not rip it out yet. He pushes the Philistine to the ground, keeping the ox goad hooked in his jaw. Something has been severed in the man's throat, and his blood is spraying freely, covering everything around them, including Shamgar. The acolyte glares at Shamgar with deepest hatred. The handmaiden has her eyes closed. The other two warriors are groaning at his feet nearby. The stunned army begins clamoring for his head. Shamgar looks down at the impaled man. He leans close, careful to look him directly in his eyes, and then finally jerks the ox goad backwards to kill him. Rising swiftly, Shamgar walks over to the axe warrior, whose knee he destroyed, and grabs the man's hair. He pulls his head up, wanting to ensure that the man and his demon god feel defeat, then breaks his neck against the ox goad handle. The warrior with the torn ribs tries to stand up and flee, but Shamgar steps on his back. "Renounce your god. Dagon will bring me in, and I will—" The ox goad falls so fast that the Philistine never sees it coming. The last noise he makes is a wet cough. Shamgar stands over the corpse and positions himself in front of the idol again. He stares at the handmaiden, then at the king of Gath. "Send your champion again." Chapter 29. The champion emerges again from the ranks, joined by his shield-bearer. Other soldiers back away from him with their heads bowed. The most dangerous of them all, the ruler of their champions, a prince of warriors, a god to be worshipped, yes, but now Shamgar sees something else, a man with flesh that can be torn apart. "I will need to kill you this time, farmer. You defied my generous offer." The champion says this casually, in between bites of a roasted leg of lamb that he carries. The handmaiden begins chanting her curses, joined by the acolyte. Shamgar listens carefully for the voice. His skin feels flush. His heart pounds. Every movement aches. The wound on his head is burning again. He feels a small trickle of blood running down his face, as though it has opened anew. "Do not abandon me." Then, in his spirit, "It has been declared." Pain will not ebb, and fatigue will come, but Shamgar knows that he has what he needs to kill this man. "Forgive me, Hebrew God, and be not offended by my doubt." Shamgar points his ox goad at the champion, and then at the gathered host, and says in his loudest voice, "This very day I will mount your heads on the gates of Azekah, and all the land will know there is a God in Israel." At this, the handmaiden stops her chanting. She turns to the champion and says something Shamgar cannot hear. The champion waves her away and approaches Shamgar with his shield-bearer at his side. And then the champion charges forward so fast that Shamgar barely has time to lift the ox goad and block the attack, the scimitar sliding down the handle and onto the hook, and Shamgar wrenches it down and away with all of his might. He trips, lands hard on his knees, sees the scimitar arcing towards his scalp, tries to lay down beneath the blow, feels it rush past his face. The shield-bearer is attacking now, terrible and fast like his champion, and Shamgar finds himself crawling backwards through the snow to get away from their strikes. He still has the ox goad clenched tightly in his left-hand grip. His knuckles scrape against the ice and rocks, ripping flesh. With his right he swings his fist. Both Philistines are desperately fast, and Shamgar misses, but he sees now their faces devoid of humor, their pride dissipating, and the exertion of sweat on their faces, and he knows again that they are merely men who can be torn apart. And tear them apart he will, with a farming tool drenched in the hot blood and bile of wicked men, and his yell becomes a scream of endless fury as he strikes the heavy staff against the waist of the shield-bearer. The sound of the shattering hip bone cracks across the battlefield. The shield-bearer slumps over, immobile, the shock of the blow stunning him. The champion is distracted only a breath, but this is enough, because Shamgar can move endlessly faster than any pagan champion, for he has seen the ancient fire. The ox goad whirls over his head, then down, striking the champion's helmet so hard that it flies off, and then another hard blow to his face makes the man slump to his knees. Shamgar crushes his throat with the wooden handle, knocking him on his back. Both Philistines now lay in the snow beneath him. Shamgar wastes no further time with the shield-bearer, ramming the iron tip into his neck to kill him. As for the champion, he seizes the stunned man's boot and drags him toward the idol, glaring first at the king, then the acolyte, then the handmaiden. The champion tries to attack again with an aimless, feeble strike, which Shamgar easily blocks. He jabs the spike end of the handle under the man's breastplate and into his belly. This makes the Philistine lurch weakly. Shamgar pulls him up and props him against the idol, in full view of the gathered host. He pulls away his helmet. Blood pours out of the corners of the champion's mouth. His eyes are vague and unfocused as he looks up at Shamgar. "Show me the sign of submission," Shamgar says. The champion blinks, tries to move again. Shamgar inserts the iron hook of the ox goad into his ear. "Show me the sign of submission," he yells. Slowly, the Philistine raises his hand and places it on Shamgar's inner thigh. With his other hand, he opens his palm. Chapter 30. Shamgar picks up the champion's scimitar blade and cuts his head cleanly off with a single strike. Quiet now, in the boundary of blood. No man speaks or moves. Not the king, not the handmaiden, no one dares. Shamgar drops the sword and kicks the ox goad up from the ground into his hands. He never slows as he walks towards the two women. The handmaiden rises from the idol, speaking to him with deepest hatred. "By Ashtoreth, goddess of the earth, by Dagon, god of the seas, you will suffer more than any man has ever suffered. Your seed will die in pain. Your woman will be ravaged by every soldier in Gath. Your land will burn, and I will curse the generations beyond you." Shamgar stops just as he reaches her. He leans in close to her face. He wants her to see his eyes, to see what he is feeling. And she does. Feels it in the depths. Senses the heat of it, the light, the ancient strength far beyond what her mind has conceived, even in the black depths of the temple in Gath, when the goddess came to her as a girl. And as she sees it, as she feels it, her eyes falter in terror and fear. The ox goad flashes up and bursts through her chest. With another strike, he removes her head. The acolyte screams at the sight of her dead mistress. She attacks, clawing at his face with her long nails. Shamgar throws her to the ground, swinging the ox goad and striking her in the neck. She starts gagging. He kneels down to look at her, to let her feel the terrible rage of the Hebrew god, just as her mistress felt it. When her body grows limp, he removes her head as well. He holds the two heads of the women up for the king of Gath and his whole army to see. The king of Gath keeps his bearing only a moment longer. Then he turns and flees in terror, his army fleeing with him. Away from the pass, away from the boundary of blood, away from Hebrew lands, and away from the horrors they have seen. Shamgar tosses the heads aside. The fire within him calms for only a moment, long enough for him to gently carry the bodies of the Hebrew girls away from the idols of Dagon and Ashtoreth. He lays them down carefully. He will find their families and tend to their burials. He will see the tears of their mothers and the agony of their fathers. They will tear their garments and scatter ash on their heads, and they will weep together at the evil in their land. But first, he walks back to the idol. The goddess leers at him. The blood of the sacrificed girl has stained it dark and is flowing into the snow at its base. Shamgar holds the ox goad like an axe, prays for strength, strength to destroy whatever needs to be destroyed, and swings the ox goad down. The idol shatters into pieces. He spits on its crumbled remains. Then he raises the ox goad up to the heavens, to the sun and the stars beyond. He yells his war cry. Desperate to cover the rocks with more Philistine blood, he rushes after the army, feeling the might and glory of the God who rules over the boundary of blood. Epilogue. My king, now you know of the victory of Shamgar son of Anath, who is mentioned in the Song of Deborah. Yahweh shaped him into a mighty leader who saved our people in a desperate hour. How curious it is that he was a foreigner. When the men of God do not answer his call to war, he will find a willing heart in unlikely places. You may recognize that mysterious fire which came over him on the battlefield. I am certain your father spoke of it, for it is how he waged war and triumphed. He knew it as the covering. We can imagine the glorious fright in the hearts of the Philistine kings as they heard of the awakening of Yahweh in the land. We can envision the heads of 600 dead men mounted on the city walls of Azekah as a warning to the pagans and a source of shame to weak-hearted Israelite men. We can rejoice in the triumph over Ashtoreth, the humiliation of her priests, and the destruction of her plans to contaminate Yahweh's land with her temple. And we can see, through the eyes of the heart, the happy reunion of Shamgar and his family, with a wife who loves him and children who admire him. It was not long afterwards that the people of Israel once more warred against our God, and the dark years continued. But for a brief time, men found the courage of their ancestors and remembered who they were. May your reign be long, Lord, and may the work of your hand prosper. May you remember the faith of your father David, and the faith of men like Shamgar, son of Anath. Do not turn aside to the right or to the left. Humble yourself before our mighty God, and it will go well for you. I beg your indulgence for a word of caution. Do not be seduced by the promise of safety, the strength of your chariots, or the whispers of foreign women. For as Yahweh grants you an empire, so he can remove it. Kings of the earth are dust in his palm, and he will ensure that even the blood-covered stones cry out praise to his name. Afterward. After Ehud came Shamgar son of Anath, who struck down 600 Philistines with an ox goad. He, too, saved Israel. Judges 3:31. Author's note. There is nothing known about the biblical character of Shamgar apart from 2 brief references in the book of Judges, chapters 3 and 5. In this story, all characterizations and events not found in those passages are fictional and are intended to be treated as such. Based on careful research and time spent in the land, the details about weather, terrain, and the historical and cultural setting are generally accurate. Nonetheless, fictional choices were made to enhance the narrative and help contemporary readers relate to the journey of a man from thousands of years ago. The boundary of blood is an actual pass in the foothills of Israel. Standing at the top of it, you can see where David fought Goliath, along with countless other battles in the long history of war in that region.